let's get started. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. President Barack Obama announced his response to the crisis in Iraq. Sunni militants have taken control of several Iraqi cities and towns. The president told the White House press corps that the U.S. will deploy 300 military advisors, boost intelligence assets, and left open the possibility of airstrikes on specific militant targets. He will also seek diplomatic solutions with willing partners in the region. However, the president affirmed repeatedly that U.S. combat troops will not be returning to Iraq. Militants of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria have seized the key cities of Mosul, Tikrit, and now control a contiguous swath of the Fertile Crescent from the edge of Baghdad to the outskirts of Aleppo in Syria. At least one Iraqi bishop is cautioning against international intervention. Archbishop Jean Sleiman of Baghdad told aid to the church in need that ISIS must be countered by Iraqi forces and that a strong consensus within the country is required to avoid a tragic outcome. More about this latest on the Iraqi crisis and what it means for the Christian population there in our next segment. Meanwhile, 3 nights of jihadist attacks in Kenya have left at least 58 dead. According to witnesses on Sunday, armed terrorists went door to door in a coastal town near the Somali border, demanding to know if the men inside were Muslim and if they spoke Somali. Gunfire greeted any unsatisfactory answers. The wife of one victim said her husband was shot in the head and chest after saying he and his family were Christian. Al-Shabaab, the al-Qaeda-linked group, claimed responsibility for the attacks, which continued on Monday and Tuesday. 2 hotels and many vehicles were also set ablaze. 5 arrests have been made in connection with the killings. And a suspected Boko Haram bomber killed at least 14 people on Tuesday at a World Cup viewing site in northeast Nigeria. At least 26 more were wounded. Unrelated to the attack, authorities said they've arrested nearly 500 suspected militants, including a terror kingpin in southeastern Nigeria. There is still, sadly, no progress to report on the 276 abducted schoolgirls. We'll keep you posted. On Tuesday, a federal judge in Mobile, Alabama, tossed out EWTN's claim that requiring employers to include contraception in their health care coverage is unconstitutional. U.S. District Judge Callie Grenade ruled that the Catholic network's religious freedom was not being infringed by the federal HHS contraception mandate, requiring it to provide contraception coverage, including abortifacients and sterilizations. EWTN Chairman and CEO Michael Warsaw called the decision extremely dismissive and very troubling. The network has appealed the decision to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta. Enforcement of the mandate begins July 1st. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court will decide in days the much-anticipated Hobby Lobby case, which will determine whether a for-profit company with religious objections can be forced to offer contraception coverage per the Obamacare mandate. It appears religious organizations could soon be battling the Obama administration on a new front. According to the Huffington Post and other sources, the president will soon sign an executive order denying federal contracts to companies and nonprofits that would discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. Under such an executive order, Catholic hospitals, schools, charities, and other organizations that adhere to church teaching might be excluded from receiving federal funds. We'll continue following that story. Police in Phoenix have made an arrest in connection with last week's murder of Father Kenneth Walker. 54-year-old Gary Moran, an ex-convict with a history of violence and drug abuse, was arrested Sunday night on suspicion of first-degree murder, burglary, and armed robbery, among other charges. Father Walker, who was 28 years old and ordained for the priestly fraternity of St. Peter just a year ago, had interrupted a late-night robbery in the rectory of his parish near the Arizona state capitol. Morin had beaten and wrestled a gun away from Father Joseph Terra, the church pastor. Father Terra blacked out during the attack, and when he came to, he found Father Walker had been shot. The young priest received last rites from Father Terra at the scene. He later died at the hospital. Father Walker will be laid to rest this weekend in Kansas. May he rest in peace. And a week after Pope Francis had canceled 2 full days' worth of appointments due to what was described as a mild indisposition, the Vatican has announced that the Pope will lighten his summer schedule. During July, the Holy Father will not celebrate his typical public daily Mass at the Vatican's St. Martha's Guest House, and all Wednesday general audiences for the month have been canceled. Concerns about the Pope's health began surfacing in the media last month after the Pope canceled a fairly simple event in the suburbs of Rome, owing to fatigue. This past week, the Vatican press office assured reporters that the Pope's physical condition was nothing to worry about. And Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen is another step closer to beatification. Vatican-approved theologians have affirmed the apparent miracle attributed to the intercession of the Emmy-winning American preacher. The miracle involved the revival of a California infant who had appeared to be stillborn. In March, a panel of physicians found that there was no medical explanation for the child's recovery. The purported miracle still requires the subsequent approvals of the Congregation of the Causes of Saints and Pope Francis. If decreed by the Pope, the beatification would be held in Archbishop Sheen's hometown, Peoria, Illinois. No timeline has been set, and we'll be following this story as we have all these years. And coming up before the end of the show, the exclusive cover reveal of my new children's book, Kerman Durman and the Relic of Perilous Falls. It won't hit bookstores until September, but I'll tell you how you can get a free signed early reader's edition. But you have to stay tuned. The big reveal is straight ahead.